Hey people of God, it's been a little bit since I did one of these Monday afternoon videos. For a while I was releasing a video every Monday afternoon, but it's been maybe a couple months. We've been doing a lot of teaching and preaching and it's been busy. It's summer, we're in North Carolina, it's a little bit more informal. Here's what I'm going to share with you. I want to share with you a testimony of what God did about 2 weeks ago in like half of a cross-country moved a couple individuals, a couple disciples from Chicago here to Eastern North Carolina. It was over a 900-mile move, and I want to share just a little bit about what God was teaching us through that move. It was really good, but here's a couple of scriptures I'd like to preface this with. 1 James chapter 4, starting in verse 13, says this. It says, "Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that." Isaiah chapter 55, verses 8 and 9 says this, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." We're going to title this video something like "His Ways Are Higher," the testimony of the Whole Heart Move. Here's what happened. We set out to move two individuals from Chicago to Eastern North Carolina, where we are. We're in Greenville, Eastern North Carolina. So I went up to help with the move, to really facilitate the move. I drove up to Chicago, took my vehicle, drove up to Chicago on my own a day before the move, did it all in one day. Didn't think I could drive that much, but the Lord just gave me grace. It was a straight shot. It was pretty easy, actually. And I got there, I'm like, sweet. But the day of the move, complications happened. The day of the move, there were a few more things than we expected that we needed to move, and timing of the U-Haul trailer that we were getting took longer than expected, and et cetera, et cetera. So we got a late start, and we were really planning to finish this move to go from Chicago to Eastern North Carolina in just 2 days. And the day of the move itself was a Wednesday. And then one day after the move, Thursday. We're going to leave Wednesday afternoon and then get here to Eastern North Carolina on like Thursday afternoon. So it took us a little bit longer on Wednesday. I'm like, Lord, I don't know what's going on. It's like raining in the process, and there were some difficulties, but we're like, we trust you. We know this is of you. And so we trek and we get through a good portion of Indiana on that first day. And then we stop close to the border of Ohio and find a hotel. That day at the hotel, I randomly meet this guy, a new friend named Jason. Got to just encourage him in his faith. He's a believer, but has gone through some struggles, made some mistakes in the past. And before we were leaving, he was just sitting on the bench, and we ended up being able to lay hands on him and pray for him. It was amazing. And then Thursday comes, and we're driving on Thursday. We get through most of Ohio. We're coming into West Virginia. We're going through West Virginia, and then we start to have car issues. One of the vehicles, there was a vehicle with a trailer, and there was another vehicle behind it. One of the vehicles randomly dies. And we're like, oh no, the vehicle dies. We pull over to the side of the road. All these thoughts are going through my head, like, man, we're gonna have to maybe get a mechanic. We're gonna have to get it towed. I don't know how far the nearest mechanic shop is. And we're waiting, and the car starts up again. So we're like, okay, that was strange. Let's keep driving. So we keep driving. After, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, the car dies again. But the car starts right back up after it dies, like nothing was wrong. And so we keep driving. After the car dies like 3 times, I'm like, okay, we gotta stop. Let's go to the nearest AutoZone. Let's go to an automotive store and see if they can run some codes or just test the battery and alternator and see what's going on. So we take it to this car shop, and they check it out, and they didn't find any codes, but they're testing the alternator and testing the battery, and they say everything is fine, and they look around a bit and they can't figure out what's wrong. And we're like, oh man, we really have this goal to get to Greenville today. And it was possible at that time. That was maybe at like, I don't know, 5 p.m., something like that. And we're like, oh man, so we keep driving and the car is okay for a while, and it was raining heavily. Now we're in West Virginia and we're going through the mountains, and we got one vehicle with a trailer. The vehicle's kind of struggling to actually pull this trailer. We got another vehicle that's like dying and starting, but we're like really determined. We have this idea in our minds, really kind of our own plan, that we're going to get to North Carolina, to Greenville today. And so we're driving and we're trying to make it happen, and we're kind of pushing in our own strength, getting a little strivey, and the vehicle continued to die. And the vehicle died a few more times. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 more times. But both myself and the other driver, our disciple Barbara, we were like, we want to keep going. And then so we fought it for a couple hours, and then around 7:30, I just had to make the call, and I'm like, we can't do this. We've prayed over the vehicle. We trusted the Lord. We believed we were going to make it, but God just has a different plan, and so we need to stop. So we end up in this city called Hillsville, Virginia, and we stop in Hillsville, Virginia, and we're all just kind of like, oh man, we really wanted to make it back. My wife Ishan was waiting on me, and like our 6-week-old baby boy, and I'm like, I'm trying to make this trip as short as possible, but the Lord had other plans. So we stop in Hillsville, Virginia, and it's early. It's about 8 by the time we get to a hotel, and we just grab the hotel, and the other disciple, Michael, and I want to go grab some dinner. So we go out and we're looking around for a place to grab dinner. We find this little Mexican restaurant that was actually incredibly good. We sit down, we eat our meal. It's really, really good. And then at the end, our waitress comes up to us, and she just starts a conversation, and she's like, where are you guys from? What brings you here to Hillsville? Are you from this area? And we're like, no, we're just on our way. I'm actually a pastor of a ministry, and this is Michael. He's going to be our intern this year. And she's like, whoa, you're a pastor. I never would have imagined that. Whatever, you're so young. I get that all the time. And so we start this conversation with her, this beautiful young woman there, about 20 years old. And I just ask her, I'm like, how are you doing spiritually? How's your heart right now? And she starts to talk about how she was raised in this certain denomination, and she thinks she's okay with the Lord, and just has some real convictions about her faith and so forth. But we just got to encourage her and just make the gospel clear and just love on her and bless her. We probably talked with her for maybe 15 or 20 minutes as she's just standing at our table near closing time in the restaurant. And at the end, we got to just hold her hands and pray for her and bless her. And it was, I think, very significant for her life. She's like, yeah, there are some steps that I can take to be closer to God, and maybe even my family will join me. And she's like, I think we can do the things that you were suggesting. And so we leave that restaurant and we go back to the hotel, and we're like, yes, Jesus. And we let our other disciple, Barbara, know. That morning, I get up and I take the car to the mechanic. I called the mechanic like the night we were there. By God's grace, they were able to get us in at 8 a.m. the next morning. And I take the car to the mechanic, and they're like looking at it and testing it. They do everything they can. And this young mechanic comes out to me. He's like, we can't find anything wrong with the car. Do you want to go on a test drive with me and see? And I'm like, absolutely. So I go on a test drive. I drive the car. I'm driving it all over the highway. Meanwhile, I get to talk to this mechanic, and like I get to like gospel talk with him. And I'm like, I'm a pastor. How are you doing in your faith? Like, are you a believer? And he's like, I've been going to a church, but I don't go consistently, and I have this or that suspicion about some things going on. And I got to talk through it just a little bit and just encourage him. We get back. The car is absolutely fine. They charge us $25 for just a little inspection fee, and we drive smoothly all the way back to Greenville. Absolutely no issues with the car. And at the end, we were just like, Lord, your ways are higher. Whatever you want to do is okay. Like, if you wanted to stop us in Hillsville, because you had an appointment with that waitress and you had an appointment with that mechanic, and you sent us to speak the gospel to them and use us for that night. Like, your will be done. And it was just kind of humbling. Like, we always have to remember not to become strivey, not to force things to happen based on our own plans and our own ambitions, but to just be cognizant and just be aware when God is closing a door, when God is rerouting, when God is redirecting you. And know that there is a reason for difficulty. There's a reason for setback. There's a reason even maybe for longer seasons of just pain and endurance, because as God's children and as his lights, God is using us even in difficult times to be witnesses and to bear his gospel. So I hope that encourages you. Maybe something you're going through, maybe a momentary thing like a short trip, or maybe a longer issue, but know that God's ways are higher. He has in mind his glory and the blessing of his people. Thanks for watching.